Go away.
And welcome back to another episode of Stories from the Shed. My name is Adam, and again with me this week, a man who likes his women thicker than a bowl of oatmeal. Jake, how's it going?
I love how you make all these assumptions about me. You cleared that with Sean?
Sean
Cleared that?
Sean okayed that one. He
Sean,
says
the next time I see you, we're going to have a fight.
Thicker than a bowl of oatmeal.
he says that Jake likes
How
him
big
thicker
is-
than a bowl of oatmeal.
Well, how big is this bowl?
You like him thick and creamy.
You don't know this.
We were just talking about one of your movies. What was the movie there?
I don't know. What movie?
Unshaved.
Are we talking about?
Thick and unshaved.
Yeah. We're not talking about this. We're not having this conversation right now.
Well, Jake, welcome back to the Shed.
Yep, it's great.
We brought a few friends with us.
Yep, we got the dogs with us. That was me telling the dog to go away because he was trying to come over here and drink my beer.
Yeah, we got
earlier.
Jack and Lily with us. So
Yep.
if you hear some moving around in here, it's
Barking.
not Dino. And if you hear something else, that would be my wife, Sarah.
Hello, hello.
Hello, hello. It's nice to have you back. Yeah. I am an idiot and forgot to turn my phone off.
Oh.
Give me 1 second.
We
I will
got
take care
one
of this.
fucking rule in the Shed.
Shut your fucking phone off.
I know. I'm
That's
sorry.
what he says to me.
Oh.
Yeah, I know.
He says that. He says it just like that before he hits record every time.
Yeah, basically. Everyone
Every
turn your
time.
goddamn phone off.
Because he can tell. He knows.
Oh, I know. I can hear it in my headphones. These monitoring headphones may be cheap, but I can hear your interference.
So we got a great day in the Shed. It's raining out. That doesn't stop the boxing. We got the boxing on.
Yep.
We're comfortable, and we're ready to do a show. Jake, how was your week?
It was exhausting. It's been super rainy this week. I hope it gets better soon, honestly. It's nice that there's no snow, though. I'll give it that much.
Yep.
Yeah.
It's good napping material.
Oh,
you
for
know?
sure. I took a nap before I came out here. You guys wanted me to go get dinner with you, and I'm just like, I need a nap. I can't even stand it. I drove to Mass and back today for a car that didn't turn out as I had planned it, and you know what? That's okay, because I just bought one, and I don't need another one. I just had a case of Oh Shiny. That looks pretty.
And I always thought Mass
know.
was on Sundays. How was how was your week, Sarah?
Busy. I've been on the road a lot. It's nice to go into Saturday and Sunday and just be able to relax.
And my week was a week.
You're going to be driving a school bus soon.
Yeah, maybe.
Well, potential school bus. We'll see. It's gray. Is it a school bus if it's gray?
It's one of them creeper school buses.
Creeper school
Yeah, I'll
bus.
have to contact my boss.
We're going to tint the windows on it.
Let her know.
Yeah,
It's
make
a
it extra
brilliant
creepy.
idea.
Yeah, exactly. And
15 stops.
And then around around Halloween, she can decorate it with like that orange and black tassel shit. You know what I mean? Put a big spider on the hood.
Hang up.
It's perfect. It's
some
got that dark theme
lights
going on.
and-
Yeah.
Like a Beetlejuice bus.
Yeah.
Yeah. Don't they have like purple Christmas lights you can hang up on the inside? Do stupid shit like that, or even orange ones. Yeah.
So Sarah, what did you bring for us tonight?
Yeah. Sarah grabbed us the beer.
Yeah,
Thank
she
you very
did.
much.
She picked this up for us yesterday.
It's from the Baxter Brewing Company.
Oh, hey Baxter.
And it's called Per Diem.
Oh yes.
How do you Baxter?
You know what? This is a pre-prohibition porter, so you know it's good.
Yeah, they've been making it since before Prohibition.
Since before Baxter was around.
Did you know that Baxter Brewing Company was around pre-Prohibition?
No, I did not.
Oh, well, today we all learned.
That yeah.
Because I didn't know that either.
Oh man. So I love this beer. This was a great choice. And I'm not usually a fan of porters, but this is a porter I do like.
I legitimately think this is a picture of one of the mills because it's got that tower in it.
Yeah.
I think it's like the same one that I think Martin's has for storage. Mm-hmm. It looks like that one.
Yeah.
One of the mills in downtown area.
How's
Anyway.
that?
All along the East Coast, as some of you know, there's those empty, vacant, old mill buildings from like the 1850s.
Right.
And you see them all over the East Coast, especially if you take the Amtrak. Mm-hmm. On the can, it's got one of those, and it's got some people that look like they're working and making some money. I'll tell you what, I'm going to give
Just
this
because
one...
they're carrying briefcases and purses doesn't mean they're making money. One of them's carrying a toolbox. You think that guy makes money?
Yeah, he's working.
I carry one. I don't make shit.
Well, I'm going to give this one 4 Scully fingers.
Okay, there we go. Apparently, we used stars in one of our last ones.
Yeah, no stars. No
No
stars.
stars here.
I give it a 4.
I don't know what to give it. I got to try it again. Yeah, I'll give it a 4.
Fours
I'm
it
cool with
is.
that. I'm cool
Fours
with
it
that.
is.
Yep.
Awesome. So when you're in the area or you're stopping at a gas station or something, check out the per diem.
Can you get this as a 6-pack or?
This comes
Something
in.
like
This comes in a 6-pack.
Oh,
Yeah.
perfect.
So a lot of their brews come only 4-pack, but
And I think a lot of their flavors could probably only be bought there at the
brewery.
Yeah.
at the brewery.
Yeah, exactly. Hey, listen, we got to stop doing free plugs.
yeah, we're done. We're done.
So, what's the topic this week?
Yeah. This was a listener suggestion. We got this one from a few different people. This is a story that happened in 1984. Nobody here on this podcast was born back in 1984, but it's a story that we've all heard about growing up as kids. This happened in a town, Auburn, Maine, which is not far from where we are right now, just really probably a 15-minute drive at most, would you say? Mm-hmm. And you can be at the area where this happened. So as kids driving by and all this, my parents used to always say, that's where
That's
happened.
where this happened. Yeah, my mom always used to tell me the same thing driving by because we would drive through there quite a bit. There used to be a little tattoo shop or like a jewelry or like a body piercing shop in that little purple building across the street, not too far from there. Yeah. We used to go there all the time. She was super into that, and she would look at that building and say, "Don't go anywhere near that building. That's where this happened.
That's where this event happened." And Sarah, I mean, I think you even talked about some.
I've heard about it. I wasn't really familiarized as a child about what had happened here
for
but
completely understandable reasons.
Yeah. But as I, in my teenage years, I might have heard of it, and
yeah. So this is
maybe like 3 years ago I heard about it.
What's the address of this house we keep bringing up? I'm sure everyone's just like, what the hell are they talking about? This is the goddamn story.
This apartment building was on 317 Main Street in Auburn. Is there? It's still there.
It's still being rented out.
And this is a story, once we get into it, that I feel like a lot of our local listeners really are going to be.
Oh, yeah.
They're going to be, oh, yeah, that's right.
I remember when that happened.
That
I
was
remember
awful.
that. I think about that every time I drive past that building even. So this is the story about Angela Palmer, who was a 4-year-old girl, very young, and how her life came to a tragic end. Now, late on a Saturday afternoon, an Auburn police officer, John Reed, who's a guy that's known really well in the area, a really good guy, still to this day, one of those standout type of people in your community type, was reaching the end of a long day. He had worked, I think, 10 hours already.
Yeah, already a long day at that point.
And it was a typical October type of day. It was, or any kind of day in Maine. It was kind of cold and it was cloudy and gloomy.
Yeah,
and
very much like Seattle.
The wind had already taken the foliage off the trees, so we're kind of in that.
So we're going into winter mode.
Yeah, so he's anticipating getting off work, and he's got a son of his own, and he wants to spend some time with his boy and all that. When his radio goes off in his cruiser, this was dispatch that called, and this was roughly around 4 o'clock, and he was instructed to go to 317 Main Street.
In the afternoon, 4 o'clock.
4 o'clock in the afternoon, just for a report of there being smoke. Mm-hmm. Now, Auburn's not that big of a city, as you know.
Right.
Or as now, our listeners know, but minutes later, John Reed reached the apartment building.
Do they know who called? Was it neighbors?
Neighbors.
I believe it to be, yeah.
It had been neighbors who had called and reported it.
Okay.
He had made his way to the apartment building, but at that time, there was fire trucks that were arriving, and another police officer by the name of Tom Kelly. He was already standing outside the building. Mm-hmm. Now, what he did was he told Kelly to wait for him. Reed showed, they're communicating on the radio. He says, "Don't do anything. Wait till I show up." And as he shows up, he gets there. Now, John Reed, he's known as being, kind of a tough guy in the area. Not a bad guy, but definitely a strong guy, a guy that seems like he could get it done.
He didn't take no bullshit.
He might be a hard guy to... I could see this guy being a good cop.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
You know what I mean? He's just got that kind of a personality, and definitely the kind of person you would want serving your community.
Oh, for sure.
So they're already radioing in. They're getting ready to proceed.
Yeah, they're going up, they're about to go up into the building. He looks at his what would you call that?
His
he
comrade.
He goes, let's go up and get it over with. They climb the 4 concrete steps to the building, and they enter a hallway. Several firemen had followed them. They headed for the 2nd floor, where 2 of the 3 residents were standing on a landing. Middle-aged lady who was one of those residents was complaining very loudly. The guy inside is crazy. Look at all the smoke. It smells like burnt hair.
Now, what's interesting is that this happened on a Sunday, and this guy had been, a little backstory to this event up to this point, he had been in his apartment building with his family, kind of locked up all weekend for the most part, with, I don't know, what religious music, Christian type music. Blasting. I mean, just so loud that it's disrupting everybody in that building. And was it on the whole time? I believe it was on continuously, like round the clock, never went off, and so people were kind of irritated with him.
Maybe they're just having their own prayer session.
Well, that's exactly what he's doing, at least. But anyways, it's just kind of odd behavior. And
a lot of the tenants or his neighbors would go up, knock, and say, can you please put it down? And sometimes there was no answer, or sometimes, he'd respond and say, get out of here, and the devil's got a place for you.
Right. So what we're getting at is the people are warning the officers and the others that are coming to respond to this. There's somebody crazy in there. There might be, we're calling you because of smoke, but be careful, because this is what's been going on all weekend. We don't know what this guy's capable of doing.
Right.
Now, at this time, Reed turns to face the apartment door. He could see the smoke seeping from beneath the door. Okay. And this is probably somebody had seen that, and that's why they were called. There was a woman that was there. She continued to talk to him. She was kind of irate. They're crazy, watch out. So there was somebody that followed the authorities up to this apartment. Yeah,
they had said that they had been knocking for hours, and they wouldn't come out of the apartment.
The tenants.
Neighbors,
the
neighbors
right,
said,
and that's why the police are there.
Hours, right?
Yeah. Now Reed turns the knob, but it's locked. He knocks several times, but there's no answer, and they realize they have to do something real quick. He kicks on the door a couple of times.
Yeah, and he couldn't break it. A firefighter had to break the door in. He ended up splintering the jamb and breaking everything pretty badly in the process. While the firemen went for their equipment, Reed went into the apartment. The interior was just smoke everywhere. He had to crouch and kind of find his way around the apartment.
So what we're seeing is a cop going into an apartment building. There's smoke kind of up higher. You can, as we know, smoke rises. So he's crouching down to avoid being in the smoke so that he can see beyond. So while he's in there, he's looking for other occupants, of course. You know what I mean? He's looking to see who's in there, what's going on. The front door, which they went through, was in the kitchen. Of course, this being the main part of the apartment building. The rooms were in shambles. There was stuff all over the place. Not a very clean apartment.
Yep, things were thrown around. It looked like something was going on in that place. There was a stove that was up against a left-hand wall in the kitchen, and its door was wedged shut by a chair, and thick smoke was coming out of the oven.
Now, to the right of to the right of the entrance, there's a small bathroom. Reed looked in there and he shouted, "Is there anybody in here?" There's no answer, so they're still continuing to search for people as they see that trapped oven door. Now he walks across the kitchen, pushes open a door to the bedroom. This is also empty, so they're striking out. He backs out of the room, notices a living room to his left. This is not nearly as smoky as the kitchen. This is probably the safest part of the house. Once he's in there, he notices that there's
3 people sitting there.
3 people there.
There's a man, woman, and a child, and they're all holding hands. They were standing before a bay window, staring down in the street. He looks at them and says, "Get the hell out of here. What are you doing?" The adults didn't respond, and it looked as though they hadn't even heard him. So they're clearly either not with it or they legitimately didn't hear him. They never said anything about a fire alarm going off. I don't know if maybe they just couldn't hear him because something was going off, or they are just in their own
well, they
world.
Didn't hear,
really.
But the
little girl that was there
turned around.
Yeah, she looked at her mom, and looked at her mom and was like, let me go. And her mom lets her go. So she goes with the cop, and the cop tries to get the other 2 adults out, and it's not going well. Eventually they get him out.
Now, as he's leaving the apartment, he's holding the girl, isn't he, Sarah?
Well, he had told them many times to exit the apartment. And when he went to go and grab the little girl, the mom wouldn't let go of her. And she looked over to the gentleman, John.
Oh, yeah, her stepfather.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And he said, it's okay, you can let the little girl go.
That's right. Yeah,
And
I read something to that.
John, the officer.
John Reed.
Yeah,
so we got John Reed, who's the officer, and John Lane, who's
yes.
the stepfather. We'll get more into him later.
Yeah.
But
but the officer then, after, John Lane said, it's okay, you can let her go. That's when Mom let go, and he took the little girl out of the apartment, and then the 2 adults ended up exiting the apartment as well.
now, when he left the apartment, he held her into his arms. As he's exiting, one of the tenants says,
Where's the baby?
"Where's the baby?" And of course,
He's like,
what do you mean, baby?
I have the baby right here. This is the
Right.
baby. And she says, no,
There's a baby.
there's a baby.
so he immediately sends others in there. I believe it's a firefighter. He says, "Look for look for a crib, look for something. I did not see a baby, but look for anything, signs as to where this child could be, because it's somebody else that's in this apartment."
So they end up not finding a baby, and firefighters go up into the apartment, unplug the oven, remove the chair, and looked into the oven.
And this is where this story gets
And
really dark.
This is where they found
The baby.
Angela Palmer, who was 4 years old.
Yeah.
That's where she was. The firefighters went down, got John Reed, and said she's in the oven, and he was just...
At first, a lot of them thought it was a doll. And I think that's a natural reaction when you see something like that. A lot of times when people find a dead body, even in a field, their first thought is it's a mannequin. So naturally, you see something like that in an oven, you're going to think, oh, somebody threw this life-size doll in the oven, turned it up, and they're trying to burn the house down with this.
Right.
John Reed at this time goes, checks it out, couldn't believe his eyes, and then turned to his partner and also radioed to other police to come down.
But don't make a big deal of this.
But don't make a big deal, because we don't want the neighbors to get upset.
And get violent.
So they ended up arresting Cynthia Palmer
And
John Lane.
While they're outside of the apartment,
Yeah.
John Lane is saying things like,
Lucifer is dead.
Lucifer is dead. It's over now. Just making these kind of weird comments.
Yeah, I got rid of him. Where all these weird things.
And others that are there that are hearing him talking like this don't really understand what he's saying. They don't really understand what he means exactly. It's all just...
Right, they're probably thinking it's just some religious...
Or him saying his crazy
stuff.
shit that he's always saying and doing. Typical of him.
Well, when you're listening to religious music all weekend.
And while they were exiting the building, even Cynthia was saying, I didn't do it. It wasn't me.
Yeah, even before they
John
found
did
anything.
He had a Bible in his hand when they found him. And then when John Reed ended up questioning the sister, Sarah Palmer, she just said, did she call him Daddy at the time?
Yes.
Yeah, so she was calling John Lane Daddy, and she said that Angelo was a bad girl. She didn't do what he asked, so he had to teach her a lesson.
Yeah. And from what I understand, once they investigated this area, this apartment building even further, there was some blood of Angela's.
In the bathroom, in the kitchen. When they did the autopsy, there was evidence of blunt force to her head, evidence of maybe something else happened before she was thrown in the oven.
It sounds
Just
to me
all
like
kinds
she
of
was
things.
she was abused in some way. She was beaten, and at some point things got out of control.
It sounds to me like I need a beer break from this. This is heavy.
All right, we'll be right back.
All right.
October 1984, John Lane told police that he thought his girlfriend's daughter, 4-year-old Angela Palmer, was the devil when he put the child in a hot oven. The girl's mother, Cynthia Palmer, told police that Lane had drugged her and she was in a comatose state as she watched from another room.
Lily, what do you want?
And we're back. And this story is about to get even thicker because the scene that was left behind was probably the most gruesome thing that any of the first responders had ever seen. I would even say it was probably the worst day of any of their lives as far as working lives is concerned. A lot of these emergency responders had quit their jobs within the first year of this incident. A lot
of them, it was the last
call
for them.
Yeah. And one of them, I believe, had even attempted suicide at one point within that first year after this. I mean, that's
he was just so traumatized.
Traumatized it was.
Yeah,
finding what they had seen.
I mean, how do you find that and attempt to even try to live a normal life after? I mean, at least immediately. Obviously, you're gonna move on from from things, but that's such a hard thing to come across. Like, there's no explanation as to how that could happen. You don't think people are that fucked up, I guess.
Because what was found wasn't a kid that was put in the oven for an hour. No. I believe this was a kid that was put in the oven for several hours.
Yeah, and they
charred.
Yeah, charred. They had to.
Her skull was
fused to
the heating coil of the oven, and when they removed her for autopsy, they had to cut around that piece of skull and leave it there in order to get her out of the oven and take her to.
Yeah, there was another detail that I read, and I'm really grossed out by this story. But there was another detail that the first responder, John Reed, had opened the oven and found Angela, and he took the antenna from his radio and he poked what he thought was a doll leg. And
it was actually the firefighter. I believe it was the first firefighter to make it.
Was
in.
it a fire?
Yeah.
Was it a firefighter? I'm sorry.
It
Either way,
Captain
the details
Chapman,
are,
I believe.
The details are gruesome.
Yeah.
But the oven was on what? How high does the oven get? 500 and.
5. I think mine goes up to 5.
5.
Yeah.
So it was on the hottest setting.
Mine goes up to self-clean, which is probably as hot as it gets.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
they said it had been on the highest setting.
Yeah.
Just unreal. You don't think people are that fucked up in the head until you come across it.
But even though all this happened, John Reed had the mind, like we said earlier, to keep an eye on these people, do not let them go, and don't let this leak out to the people in the community. And they were brought to the local jail.
Once they had found the body
right.
in the oven.
Yeah, they arrested him, put him in the car, and took him away.
Now, they were instantly separated once they were brought to the jail.
That's when Cynthia Palmer, when she was arrested on her way out, she was like, I didn't have anything to do with this. This was him.
And she was saying that the whole way.
Yeah, the whole time.
The whole time.
Him. He had done this.
Now, what did they find out about her life prior to this?
Her mom said that when she was a child, she had some issues.
What kind of issues?
She seemed very easily manipulated. Mm-hmm. It just seems that way because how can you let someone do that to your child?
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
because she had to have consented in some really messed up way to not stop him. Either that or she was on something.
So during a lot of her interrogation and such, she even states things like he would poison me, and she believed that she was poisoned. Well, she stated that she was even poisoned that day. Correct?
Yeah, wasn't
that
there...
she was drugged, that she had a background history of where, she was mentally, sexually abused, and that John Lane also had done that to her.
I think she claimed that he had drugged her sometimes
that day.
too.
Well, even that day, but she had told the police that she had eaten, I think, some cake that he had made that was tainted. No, is that not correct?
That is not correct.
Okay,
is
well,
not correct.
was
That-
something about that?
That is what John Lane told the officers that Cynthia had done to him.
Had done to him. Okay.
And then they ended up going back that day and tried looking for cake, and there was none.
So did they cross-accuse each other of drugging each other?
Yes.
Jesus.
Yeah. Yes, he drugged me, and she drugged me. That kind of a thing's going on. But and this is 1984. Are they able to test these people?
I don't
who
think at this
knows?
time they had tests for that.
No. Well, the testing for drugs and such kind of
Maybe
came
we're
out.
wrong, but I don't.
Well, no, I think the real push for drug testing came out kind of more in the 90s when it came for employment. At this time, it wasn't really something that was huge, but I think a lot of people had stated that these people had done drugs in the past that had come out. Whether or not they were on drugs at this time, I don't know, or maybe off the drugs and kind of going crazy a little bit. But his interrogation goes a little bit different. She was the victim of as well in some sense. Is the kind of picture she's trying to paint. Where he just kind of goes off with Lucifer's dead and well,
At some point he changes it up and says, Cynthia did it, but JT. I always want to say JT Reed's.
Yeah, not quite.
John Reed.
John Reed.
Yeah.
He actually owned that gun store.
Oh.
That's
okay.
why I want to say it.
Okay.
But he had to think carefully about how he was going to word it because he's never been in a situation where he was going to interview
Somebody for doing such a crime.
For such a crime.
Right.
And in this interview, he pretty much got John Lane to admit, okay, well, you killed Lucifer. Yeah. So was Lucifer in Angela? Yes. Okay, so you killed Angela.
And he said, no, I killed Lucifer.
No, I killed. But then eventually he got him to say, yes, it was Angela, but Lucifer was in her.
Right.
Wow. That's
Yeah,
crazy, yeah.
It's
Well, and it's a smart tactic on his part because you can clearly tell he's dealing with somebody that doesn't have a full deck of cards.
Yeah, right. When you walk into that situation, everyone there is extremely mentally volatile.
Well,
You
in a
know
way,
that.
I mean, he got him to kind of realize, okay, you killed a 4-year-old girl. This is what you did to her.
And you didn't just kill her.
And
you
it
baked
wasn't-
her in an oven.
It wasn't Lucifer. It was your 4-year-old. And then that's when, at the end of the interview, he kind of got all kind of
Oh my god.
oh my God.
Yeah. We actually have a transcript of the interview. We can post that up on the Facebook page or something if we think that's a good little added bonus, I guess.
That's probably a good idea.
Or if you guys want to read Lucifer's Child, there is someone who wrote a book.
Yeah, it is called Lucifer's Child, right?
Yep.
Yeah, we can share that on social media as well.
We'll plug that book too. That was a hard one to read, that's for sure. I started reading a little bit of it this week, but like I said, I've been so busy this week. It's been really hard. But I got a couple chapters in, and man, it's just so tough. It's such a tough book.
Yeah,
Because you know what happened.
Of course. Now, what we need to get through here is going to be there's some kind of justice brought to this. Even that's kind of debatable in some regard, though. I don't know if we need to necessarily go through all the court
They had
stuff per se.
spoken about the death penalty.
Right. Well, the
They
death penalty.
wanted to allow it in this case, but
The thing is, it had been abolished in the 1830s
right,
in the
but
state of Maine.
They had discussed it because this is a sick crime. This is not okay.
No.
In any way, shape, or form.
Now they were
It's awful.
when they went to court. They were tried separate. I believe she was tried. Was she tried first, or was she tried after him?
I'm not
First.
sure.
She
I
was
want to
tried.
say I might be mistaken, but I'm pretty sure it was first.
And what ends up happening with her is she sticks with her story from day one. And her defense sticks with that story that she's an abused person. She's manipulated. She didn't really know what was going on at that time. And with that, the jury actually did believe the story. They believed her, and she was found not guilty of manslaughter, and she was allowed to go home.
Yeah, but she wasn't allowed to get her kids back. I hope.
No.
Well, the one left.
No.
No. What had happened was her older daughter, Sarah, was awarded to the state. Obviously, as part of this agreement. Things did not go so well for John Lane, fortunately. John Lane, after basically admitting to what he had done, had a very short time in court when he was found guilty of murder, and he's going to be spending the rest of his life in the state prison. He recently
Which
had
is where he belongs.
3 years ago, he recently wanted to
appeal
it.
Yeah. What was it? 30 years later now.
Yeah.
At that time, yeah.
Because he felt as if he was not represented fairly.
Oh, well, that's too bad. You literally admitted it.
I wonder why it took him 30 years to come around to that.
Well, because they say that he was mentally unstable and could not think logically.
Okay, so why should we believe you 30 years later? If you were mentally unstable 30 years ago, what's going to make you think that you're going to be different now?
And that was basically
After
his
you've done
story day one, too. His defense story.
A lot of people that live in the building now do not want to see him come out.
No.
A lot of the, I think the attorney they interviewed him on.
It was an attorney,
it was
lawyer that had written the book,
Yeah,
and that's who they had interviewed.
It was 3 years ago who they interviewed on the news, and he really felt strongly that he was represented as fairly. He had good representatives, but what you did,
there's no excuse. There's no getting out of it.
No.
There's no explaining away what you did to that child. That's I can't wrap my head around it.
And now Sarah is in her 30s.
Yeah.
Mom did lose custody.
Good.
Yeah, she
Good.
doesn't.
Did she ever have any more children after? Do we know?
No, I don't think she was allowed to.
So. No.
Are you by law? Can you be prevented from having children?
If you can't, you should. You should be able to in some extreme cases
Like this?
So,
Yeah.
but we don't know if she did or not. It'd be interesting to find out if she had more children and kind of
Right.
how that went out.
Well, I'm sure if she had more children, the state would have to know, and the state would probably take them immediately, just because whether you're guilty or not. However, the state decides to weigh on that whole deal. You have already endangered the life of a child, and you've lost your one. There's no way you should be getting your other one back and then having another one.
Well,
potentially.
I don't think it's fair that she got off with nothing either. I mean, yes, she did, lose a child. Maybe she didn't understand. Maybe she did. She was in that apartment building when it happened.
Right.
She did lose, she lost custody of her other child, but you were there. You did nothing to stop your child from either being beaten and put in that oven.
Yeah, because it
And
wasn't a
now-
quick thing. There was, I see what you're saying, and to touch on what you're saying, there's evidence that he had been beating her for a period of time, and then before he had put her in the oven. At any point, she could have done something to try to stop it. It
Not
isn't like
only
she was
that-
thrown. It wasn't. What I'm saying is, it wasn't like it was a quick event, like bang, you're dead. You're witnessing this happening for hours, maybe an entire day, and you never stepped in. You had all this opportunity to step in,
Not only
and you never
that,
did.
but if you're getting physically and mentally abused from this man, you should probably just, if you have 2 kids,
Leave.
leave. I mean, I've never been put in that situation, so it's easy for me to say leave. But if you're a good mother,
Was she afraid? Maybe she was afraid to
I'm
leave.
sure she was petrified, being treated like that.
Well,
Being
I mean,
absolutely.
But then if you're buying into that, then she's a victim. Then
Well,
she got the right thing. She got off.
Well, she is a victim too, but there's such thing as taking charge of something is clearly wrong. You're well aware, whether you're on drugs or not. That's not.
take
not an
your
appropriate thing.
beating so that your daughter doesn't get cooked in the oven.
She should have probably went to a psychiatric hospital.
I think everyone in that house or in that apartment should have gone to a psychiatric hospital. I can see both sides of it. I can see where she could be a victim, where if she was drugged all the time, or she was abused, how she would feel. What's the word?
Afraid. Yeah.
Yeah, but you literally allowed someone to take your life, your child,
right?
and kill them.
Where is your line?
You know, a lot of times these people that live in abuse, they somehow find ways in their minds to justify everything.
Mm-hmm.
Well, if I wasn't, if I wasn't such an idiot, he wouldn't have done this, or he only does this when I fuck up, this kind of thing. And it's over the smallest things.
And some of the things, you know what? I'm not going to say everyone is perfect or everyone is 100% a victim. But again, in this case, man, where is your line? Mm-hmm. It just seemed like she didn't have one, and that's just not okay. I just can't wrap my head around this. You put a fucking little kid in the oven.
Right. It could have been prevented if she would have just walked away.
Right.
If this would have went to trial in 2019, if this was a recent story, how do you think her sentencing would have gone?
I don't even want to think about it. You can speculate on it. I don't even want to think
2019.
About it. Oh, my God.
They both would have been released. They had bad parents.
What do you mean?
Oh, they were victimized by their parents. It's not their fault. That's how things are nowadays.
No, because then I can go murder. Then I can go murder a child, and I'm gonna get away because my mom wasn't absolutely the best parent.
What I'm getting at is
that.
What I'm getting at is people are more apt to let that kind of stuff go lighter now than say back then in 1984.
I would say I would disagree.
Really, you would have thought that in 1984 that people cared more about the sensitivity of others and the other guy.
No, that's not what I'm talking about.
Well, they did this because they were harmed as a child.
No, what I'm saying is I don't think in 2019 at all, if this case had come up, that they would have let them go. Because do you understand how much people would react if this case happened now? There's a 4-year-old girl in an oven on high for who knows how long. And before that, she was beaten to death. I think people would rally around her. And it might even be, it would be the same thing that John Reed had tried to prevent. People would have gone after them, regardless of what time.
If this happened right now, this would have been on Facebook within like a couple minutes.
That's what I'm saying.
From the apartment
building.
That
people would rally behind these two parents, where they're like, "Oh, well, they're victims. They're both abused." Bullshit.
And to take it even deeper, they would have done some kind of testing to see what kind of chemicals were in these people's bodies at that time.
We probably have better drug tests than we do
definitely
back then.
I'm sure.
You know what I mean? And like I said, I don't agree that people would rally behind these people. Maybe they would look and say, yeah, you know what, these people did have some abuse, but they did that back in 84 too. So
yeah,
I don't think I think it would have been handled maybe slightly differently now, just because you have so much more exposure.
Pleaded insanity, and
well, clearly he's insane. And, if he would have pleaded insanity in 2019, everyone would have looked at him and been like, duh. You're still fucking guilty, but duh.
We've got kind of a similar thing going on right now in the Maine courts, where there's these two people. They don't seem terribly bright, and they had same kind of thing where you have the mom and a little girl and I can't think of their names right now, and there's a stepfather, and they beat this little girl to death, and it's in court right now here in the state.
Man, our next topic is not going to be about children dying, is it?
Well, it's about a woman dying, but not a child.
Okay. Okay. Well, I'm glad you guys are laughing. Anyway, where were we with this?
I just want to mention that apartment again. As you know, Ashton, who's been on our show a few times here.
Oh, yeah, Ashton.
He's got a friend that lives in that apartment building currently.
Really?
And I don't know if I'm not one that's huge into the supernatural thing, but the people that live in there right now, of course, whenever there's something tragic that happens somewhere, claim that there's supernatural things that happen in that apartment and throughout the entire building.
Oh, I'm sure there's something hanging around there. That's just a building of bad energy. I walk by that place and it makes me not queasy, but uneasy. You know what I mean?
I don't think there's anybody in the community that doesn't drive by or walk past it and look at it and just have at least a thought about it.
Right.
Because again, like we were saying, growing up, we always were told that's where that girl was put in the oven.
Yeah.
And so that's like ingrained in a lot of our minds.
Well, it's just so horrific. Like, it's an awful thing.
I wouldn't even want to live there.
No, me neither.
Now, the color of it's changed. At the time, I think it was like a...
Yeah, it was like a yellow.
It's like a Lewiston yellow, we'll call it. It's in Auburn, but it's a Lewiston Auburn yellow. Just to go with the Lewiston Auburn mint that we have downtown in Lewiston.
It's an LA yellow.
It's an LA yellow. But now it's kind of a...
It's kind of like greenish.
Is it kind of a greenish? It's been a while. Yeah. It definitely still looks like an old building just due to the architecture of it, but it's...
I bet you that apartment gets rented out for significantly cheaper.
I was wondering that yesterday. I was like, what?
How did they get someone to rent that place?
Any of the rooms in that building, I bet you it's got to be real cheap.
It has to be. Does anyone live in that building? Are you listening to us right now? If you are, let us know. Is your rent cheap or not? Because I'm looking for a new place to move.
And is this maybe the first time you hear about it?
I'm sure not. That's got to be disclosed when you rent out a place there.
Well, I'm sure
this
they have to tell you.
This was before we were born, and we're,
But everybody
in our
around
30s.
here knows the story.
Right.
At least knows that's where the girl was put in the oven. At least
not.
that bit.
Maybe not.
But I feel like that would have to be disclosed. Whenever you're going to purchase a house, if something tragic happened into it.
Right, but if you're renting out an apartment in this building, it's not, this is the floor that this happened. Or they don't have to, I'm sure they disclose that information, but any other...
I'm sure it would eventually...
Floor, they probably don't have to disclose that because it didn't happen in that.
I'm sure it would eventually get out. You go to work. Oh, I just moved into this apartment. Oh, where? Oh, 317 Main Street. Oh, hey, isn't that where the girl was put in the oven? That's when. Then it's out.
Yeah, right.
It wouldn't take long. It wouldn't take long. But you know what? To touch on that, Sarah, I bet you people are in and out of that building left and right. I bet you people don't stay there very long. Even if they know it going in or they find out shortly thereafter.
Also, if there are any residents of 317 Main Street that are listening to this right now and we're making wildly bold assumptions and we're wrong, please feel free to tell us.
Yeah, we're just assuming because,
right.
You find it creepy to drive by, Jake. You just said. It's even creepier to fucking spend the night in there, right?
I wouldn't. You couldn't pay me enough money. There is not enough money in the world to make me go inside that building. Never mind, stay there overnight. No, thank you.
You wouldn't even want to walk in.
No, thank you. That's a horrible story. I want nothing to do with that.
And that's where my assumption that the tenants are popping in and out left and right come from.
It just. Okay, so you know how you can go, and I know this is slightly off topic, but you know how you can go to the Holocaust. There's Holocaust museums, and some of the concentration camps that are left, they have them as memorials and museums, and you can go visit them. And they say those have a really ominous, horrible, deep, disgusting feeling to them. And I would imagine it's maybe not quite as bad, obviously, because it's one person versus 6+ million. But I would imagine it's very similar, sinking, sad, just gross feeling to be in the building.
Yeah, I'd imagine.
I couldn't do it knowing that happened there. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and
already physically, you're feeling down. Emotionally, you're feeling down. But to walk into a place that,
this happened.
Yeah,
it's not rumored. No, it fucking happened.
Yeah, it's definitely a tragic story, and there's no good part to this. There's no silver lining.
No, you may have noticed there were no sound effects except for beers opening, and that's just because none of us can emotionally handle it, so we're drinking to drown out the pain of it is really what it is. Don't laugh.
Oh, I'm just saying that's our excuse tonight. To drown out the pain. We'll drink to bring in the joy, too, and everything in between.
That's true.
So I guess that kind of summarizes this story that I can't remember who had suggested it to us, but there's Heather in Auburn suggested this story. Thank you, Heather.
Thank you, Heather.
And there was a couple of others. I believe Jason did as well.
Yep.
But
Jason's a good guy. We're going to have him back on the show.
He'll be back next week. Yeah,
nice.
No dead babies.
Good.
Just a dead woman.
Who are we doing next week?
Megan Gregory.
There's just something on the news about that.
Yeah, we'll get into that next week. Very interesting.
Yeah, we'll talk about that.
But I guess this might be a good time to remind everybody that they can find us on Facebook.
Yep.
At Stories from the Shed. You can find us on Twitter at Stories from Shed.
Adam will check it. I won't.
Instagram.
Stories from the Shed Podcast. We're also on YouTube at Stories from the Shed Podcast. And you can email us story suggestions, comments, critiques, anything, really. Even just say hi. I like reading emails. sftspodcast@gmail.com.
Yes. And Sarah, thank you for coming back to the shed.
Thank you.
Hope you enjoyed it.
Yeah.
And we'll see you back soon.
I'm
Thank
sure
you.
She was super excited to be in her own shed.
Yeah, Noah. And thank you for listening, everybody. We'll see you soon.
Well, the Auburn man convicted of murdering a 4-year-old girl by placing her in an oven 30 years ago wants to appeal his conviction. WMTW News 8's Jim Keithley joins us now to explain why John Lane is seeking to appeal after all these years. Jim?
Tracy, John Lane was the mother's boyfriend. He claims that he was so mentally ill that he wasn't allowed to file in a timely appeal after his conviction back in 1985. Now, a federal magistrate ruled last week that Lane was able to show his illness impacted his ability to appeal, and it is one of those cases that has affected so many people, and for so many reasons, the wounds are still raw after all these years.